Welcome to Who Yelling Now, Season 6, Episode 6, titled The Loneliest Generation. Copyright Mackenzie. I am Olga Foreign, your host. Today, we're talking about what many organizations, governments, and health professions are calling one of the fastest growing public health concerns of our time: loneliness. Not being alone, loneliness. For generations, we tended to think of loneliness as an emotion, something temporary. Something that happened after the loss of a loved one, a divorce, moving to a new city, or growing old. Today, the definition has become more precise. Loneliness is not simply being by yourself. It is the distress we experience when the meaningful human connections we need are greater than the ones we actually have. A person can be surrounded by people and still be profoundly lonely. The opposite is also true. A person may spend days alone and never experience loneliness because they remain deeply connected to family, friends, purpose, or community. So, something has changed. We live in the most connected civilization in human history. We can speak to almost anyone on earth in seconds. We can watch their lives unfold every day. We can gather thousands of followers, hundreds of contacts, and endless notifications. Yet, loneliness has become so widespread that many health organizations now consider it a public health concern. Think about that. How can the most connected generation become one of the loneliest? Has loneliness changed? Or has our understanding of it finally caught up? Perhaps loneliness has never been about the number of people around us. Perhaps it has always been about whether we truly are known. Today, I'd like to explore something different. Not who is lonely, but whether we have become so confident in our assumptions that we can no longer recognize loneliness when it stands right in front of us. Before we ask why this generation is considered the loneliest, I'd like to hear from the loneliness itself. Not as an enemy, not as a disease, but as a companion with something to say. Here is a poem titled Letter from Loneliness. Dear me, they speak of me like I am a curse, as if I crept in uninvited, as if I stay only when I'm needed. They never ask, who opened the door? I am not shame. I am not failure. I am the quiet that catches you when the world becomes too loud. I've been your shadow when even your own voice walked away. I held your trembling when no arms came. I watched you search for mirrors that didn't lie. I stayed when you buried your joy to become more palatable. I stayed when they loved you only in pieces. They tell you to erase me, to call me a phase, a sickness, a ghost. But I am the part of you that refused to pretend you were whole when you weren't. They have called me cold, yet I have witnessed the fire inside your silence. They have named me empty, yet I know the weight you carry and the care you learned to give yourself when no one else did. You survived because I sat beside you when no one else could. Not out of cruelty, but because no one else knew how. So now, I am not leaving, but I am not chaining you either. You don't owe me anything except the truth. Sometimes stories allow us to recognize ourselves long before facts ever can. This is the story of two people. One the world believed was lonely, the other the world believed had everything. The truth was far more interesting. This story is titled The Loneliest Generation. Every office has a Veronica. She arrived on time, did her work well, joined the birthday celebrations, signed the retirement cards, listened more than she spoke. When Monday morning came and everyone gathered around the coffee pot to share stories from the weekend, Veronica smiled politely. "What did you do this weekend?" "Oh, a little of this, a little of that." The conversation moved on. Eventually, people stopped asking. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was simply assumed that Veronica lived a quiet life. Some felt sorry for her. Others wondered why she never seemed to have plans. No one knew that over the past year, she had stood beneath the northern lights, learned to scuba dive, taken pottery lessons, volunteered at an animal rescue, attended poetry readings, and spent weekends laughing with friends who had never met her coworkers. She loved keeping the parts of her life separate. Work was work. Family was family. Friends were friends. None of them needed to know the other's existence. She wasn't hiding. She was simply living. If you asked Veronica why, she would have told you it started small. A comment years ago from a manager who thought he was being kind. "You seem like you don't have much going on outside of here. Must be nice, all that free time." He meant nothing by it. She never forgot it. After that, she noticed how people spoke about each other's lives at work, turning vacations into gossip, turning divorces into lunchroom theater, turning a single bad week into a permanent label that followed someone for years. So, she built a wall. Not out of bitterness, out of self-preservation. And on the other side of that wall, her life kept happening. Vivid, full, entirely hers. She simply stopped narrating it for an audience that hadn't earned the story. Then there was Marcus. Marcus knew everyone. He remembered birthdays. He greeted the janitor by name. He could start a conversation in an elevator and finish it in the parking lot. Every Monday, he had another story. A concert, a barbecue, a road trip, a dinner with friends. His social media seemed to prove it. People admired his life. Some were even a little jealous. No one thought to invite Marcus anywhere. Why would they? He was obviously busy. The truth was very different. Most Friday nights, Marcus sat in the same chair, television playing to fill the silence, phone in his hand, scrolling through old photographs, sometimes posting one as though it had just happened, sometimes writing about plans that never existed. Not because he wanted to deceive anyone, because if he admitted he had spent another weekend alone, he feared that would become the only thing people saw. It hadn't always been this way. There was a version of Marcus, younger, who used to actually do the things he now only described. Somewhere along the way, a move to a new city, a breakup that scattered a friend group, a few years of long hours, the doing quietly stopped. But the talking never did. He found that a good story about a barbecue traveled as far as an actual barbecue. Nobody checked. Nobody ever checks. So the stories became a kind of scaffolding, holding up a version of him that people liked, while the real Marcus sat 2 feet away in a quiet apartment, unnoticed by the very performance built to be noticed. Months passed. 2 people, 2 opposite reputations. One supposedly lonely, one supposedly surrounded. Both wrong, both right. Neither known. One afternoon, the office lost power. Computers shut down. Meetings were canceled. People drifted outside. Marcus noticed Veronica sitting quietly beneath a tree, reading. He walked over. "I always wondered why you kept to yourself." She smiled. "I don't." He laughed. "You kind of do." She closed her book. "Only here." Something in her answer unsettled him. She looked at him for a moment, longer than most people do. Then she asked, "Are you okay?" Marcus laughed. "Of course." "No," she said gently. "Really?" The smile disappeared from his face. No one had asked him that question without accepting the performance. "Why would you ask me that?" "Because," she said softly, "you're lonely." He stared at her. "Everyone thinks I'm the lonely one." "I know. They're wrong. I know." "How?" Veronica smiled. "Because lonely people recognize lonely people." He looked away. "No," she corrected herself. "People who have spent time with loneliness recognize the difference." Marcus looked down at his phone. "I don't know how you saw it. You never invite anyone into your stories." "I tell everyone my stories." "You tell them what you wish had happened." Then she added, You speak about people, but never with people. Marcus finally asked the question that had been growing in his mind. What did you really do this weekend? Veronica smiled. I had breakfast with friends. I flew to Santa Fe for an art exhibit. I called my brother. I danced terribly. I laughed until I cried. And I never felt the need to post any of it. Marcus nodded slowly. I spent mine. He stopped. Exactly the way everyone thinks you spent yours. He expected her to look away, embarrassed for him. She didn't. She just nodded like he'd finally said something true. And true things didn't frighten her. That's not nothing, she said. You said it out loud. Most people never do. What do I do with it now? You stop performing a life and start living one, even a small one, especially a small one. That sounds like it takes courage I don't have. It takes less than you think. It just takes one true sentence said to one real person instead of 100 true ones said to no one in particular. Neither of them spoke for a while. The office lights flickered back on. People began walking inside. Someone called out, Marcus, tell us about your weekend. Another voice shouted, Veronica, you should get out more. Marcus and Veronica looked at one another for the first time all day. They both laughed. Not because either comment was true, but because both comments proved the same thing. Marcus didn't post a photo that Friday. Instead, he texted Veronica. Any interest in actual pottery or just the version I'd post about? She wrote back a single word, real. It wasn't a grand transformation. It was one dinner, then eventually another. Nothing about either of their outward reputations changed. The office still whispered the same old assumptions, right up until the day it didn't matter anymore. Because neither of them was performing for that room any longer. We have become more remarkably confident at guessing who is lonely and remarkably poor at recognizing it. We read the loud ones as full. We read the quiet ones as empty. We mistake volume for connection and privacy for absence. Somewhere between the two, between Veronica's wall and Marcus' stage, is where most of us actually live. Not performing, not hiding, waiting for someone to ask a question they are willing to hear answered. Perhaps the greatest gift another human being can give us is not advice, not rescue, not solutions. Perhaps the greatest gift is simply to witness us, to see us without trying to change us. This next poem reminds us that genuine connection isn't about fixing another person. It's about remaining present. This poem is called I Am Not Here to Fix You. I am not here to fix you. I heard your silence, not the kind that waits to be filled, the kind that is complete, sharp-edged, sacred. I didn't come to soften you or dress you in daylight. I came because I saw you refuse to vanish. I've known other lonelinesses, loud ones, pretty ones, ones that beg for noise. But you stood still and made the world listen. You don't need me. I know that. But I am not here as need. I am here as witness. I don't want to rename you. I don't want to warm your bones. I only want to sit beside you and call you true. If you've never reached for me, I will not vanish. If you never change, I will not leave. Let me be the one thing you do not have to fight. Let me be not a hand that pulls, but a presence that stays. Before we leave today, my dearest listeners, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. I wonder if we've misunderstood loneliness. Not just this generation, all generations. We've become remarkably good at identifying people who are lonely, far less skilled at recognizing people who are disconnected. Those are not the same thing. They are people who spend most of their days by themselves and feel deeply connected to life. There are others who are surrounded by family, co-workers, classmates, teammates, congregations, followers, and friends, yet feel unseen. Perhaps loneliness has never been about proximity. Perhaps it has always been about recognition, not being looked at, not being seen, not being heard, but being understood, not being included, but being known. Some of us have become Veronica. We learned that not every part of our lives belong to an audience. We discovered that privacy is not secrecy, that protecting joy is not selfishness, that every beauty experience doesn't require a photograph, that every meaningful conversation doesn't require a post, that every memory doesn't need an audience to become real. Others have become Marcus. We learned to perform before we learned to connect. We discovered that if we kept talking, people assumed we were okay. If we smiled long enough, they stopped asking difficult questions. If we post enough moments, no one noticed we weren't living very many. Neither one is wrong. They're simply different responses to the same human need to belong, to matter, to be witnessed. I also wondered if we've placed too much responsibility on the word friend. Throughout history, friendship required effort. It required showing up, listening, disagreeing, forgiving, waiting, calling, visiting, being inconvenienced. Today, we can collect hundreds, even thousands of connections without asking very much of one another. The word hasn't changed. Perhaps its weight has. Then I find myself wondering, How many people around us have we already decided are doing just fine? How many people have we stopped inviting because they always seem busy? How many quiet people have we mistaken for lonely? How many loud people have we mistaken for fulfilled? How many times have we answered, "I'm fine," hoping someone would ask, "Are you?" Not out of politeness, out of genuine curiosity. Because there is a difference. This episode isn't asking you to become an extrovert. It isn't asking you to make more friends. It isn't asking you to post less or talk more. It's asking something much smaller and perhaps much harder. The next time someone tells you about their weekend, listen beyond the story. The next time someone says they're busy, wonder whether they're exhausted. The next time someone is quiet, don't assume they're lonely. And the next time someone is loud, don't assume they aren't. Because loneliness doesn't wear a uniform. It doesn't have a preferred personality. It doesn't belong to one generation. It simply waits wherever human beings stop believing they can be known. Maybe the cure for loneliness isn't finding more people. Maybe it's finding one person before whom performance is unnecessary. One person who doesn't need the edited version of your life. One person who doesn't confuse your privacy with your pain. One person who can sit beside you without trying to repair you. One person who can hear a true sentence and stay. And perhaps we should strive to become that person for someone else. Not because we're therapists, not because we're heroes, not because we have all the answers, but because every now and then someone asks us a question. And for the first time in a very long time, we decide to answer it truthfully. If this truly is the loneliest generation, perhaps the question isn't why so many people are lonely. Perhaps the better question is this: what are we becoming that allows so many people to remain unseen? Thank you for joining me for another episode of Who Yelling Now? I am Olga Foreign. Until next time, keep asking better questions, because better questions have always led us towards becoming better humans. See you in the next episode. Subscribe, tell a friend.